I was told once by my late husband Richard, "What you cherish most, guard it with silence. What you display, people will try to take." That line echoed through my head on the morning everything changed. I walked into the garage, expecting to see the familiar silver-blue gleam of Richard's vintage BMW, a car he had rebuilt with his own hands before cancer took him. But the space was hollow. The car, his last gift to me, the very shrine of his memory, was gone. For a moment, my knees nearly buckled. The empty garage gaped like a pulled tooth, painful, obvious, impossible to ignore. I called out, though I already knew the answer. "Spencer?" My voice trembled, ricocheting against the walls. From the patio, laughter drifted inside. I followed the sound, my pulse drumming. Out by the pool, my son, Spencer, reclined with a glass of whiskey. His wife, Madison, scrolled her phone, sunglasses perched like armor across her face. On the table between them lay flight tickets, resort brochures, and a receipt so carelessly tossed it fluttered in the wind. "Where is the BMW?" I asked. My voice was sharper than I intended. Spencer didn't flinch. He glanced at me the way a man looks at a waitress who brought the wrong drink, annoyed but dismissive. "Relax, Mom. I sold it." I froze. "You what?" Madison smirked, sliding the sunglasses down her nose. "It's just a car. You'll have to ask us for rides now." The words sliced through me. Just a car? That BMW had carried Richard and me through anniversaries, funerals, and nights when laughter filled the air instead of grief. To them, it was a transaction. To me, it was memory, love, and legacy. I tried to steady my breath. "How could you do that without asking me?" Spencer shrugged, swirling the ice in his glass. "Because I needed money. We're going to Maui next week. You should be happy for us. Madison deserves it. A trip, a vacation. My husband's memory traded for cocktails and sunburns." "Mom," Spencer leaned forward, his tone patronizing. "You don't need that old thing. You've got your company, your house, your comfort. Meanwhile, I'm starting a family. Shouldn't you support us instead of clinging to the past?" My chest burned. Support? Hadn't I already supported him all his life? Paid for his education? Bailed out his failed startup? Let him live in the guest house rent-free? I had given until my bones ached. And yet here he sat, sipping whiskey bought with betrayal. I forced my voice low. "That car wasn't yours to sell." Madison giggled, tilting her head against his shoulder. "Technically, Spencer's your son. What's his is yours. What's yours is his. Isn't that how family works?" Her smugness stung more than the theft itself. I turned away before the fury on my face could harden into tears. Inside, the silence was deafening. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the spot where Richard's letter still lay. He'd written it the year before he passed. A list of reminders, small and practical. Change the oil every spring. Keep the tires inflated. Drive it when you miss me. That letter had become scripture. And now it mocked me from across the room. I whispered to the empty air, "Richard, I failed. I let him take it." The truth settled in like winter frost. Spencer no longer saw me as his mother, but as a resource. Madison didn't see me at all, only the wealth she thought she could inherit. But grief has two faces. One weeps, the other steals. As the sun slid behind the trees, something inside me shifted. I remembered Richard's warning. What you cherish most, guard it with silence. Perhaps it was time I guarded more than a car. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed Madison's mocking words. "Now you'll have to ask us for rides." My stomach churned with humiliation, but as dawn painted the sky pale gold, resolve hardened in me. If they thought I was weak, they had miscalculated. Before breakfast, I opened my office safe. Documents rustled beneath my fingers. Share certificates, property deeds, partnership contracts. For years I had protected Spencer, giving him titles he hadn't earned, privileges he didn't respect. I placed the stack on my desk. "It ends now," I whispered. Still, a part of me hesitated. He was my son. Could I truly strip him of everything? The image of Richard's car, auctioned off like scrap metal, answered for me. By evening, Spencer swaggered into the kitchen, clearly emboldened. Madison trailed behind, flaunting a designer handbag. "Mom," he said casually, "we're taking the master suite while we pack for the trip. It's bigger and frankly, you don't need it." The audacity jolted me. He wasn't just taking memories. He was encroaching on the very ground beneath my feet. I looked at him, really looked. His face, once soft and boyish, now carried arrogance like a crown. Richard would have wept to see what he'd become. I steadied my voice. "Spencer, one day, everything you've done will come to light. And when it does, you'll wish you hadn't underestimated me." He laughed. "You're bluffing." But even as he spoke, his eyes flickered. Perhaps for the first time, he wondered if his mother was not as powerless as she appeared. And that was just the beginning. Little did Spencer and Madison know, the BMW was not the only thing Richard had left behind. I had guarded more than memories. I had guarded secrets. Before we dive deeper into this story of betrayal and justice, make sure to subscribe to Tangled Heart Stories and ring the bell. Here, you'll always find tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and the unexpected twists that turn weakness into strength. Where are you watching from today? Share it in the comments below. Who knows, maybe the next story will remind you of your own family's battles. By morning, my house had a new weather, not the kind you feel on skin, the kind that creeps into the rules of a place, rearranges gravity. Spencer and Madison moved through the rooms like they were shopping with an unlimited budget, fingers grazing surfaces as if price tags might appear beneath their touch. They started with towels, my good linen ones embroidered with tiny blue shells Richard loved because they reminded him of Cape Cod. Then the crystal tumblers. A framed photo of our 25th anniversary vanished from the hallway, replaced by Madison's selfie at some rooftop bar. The objects weren't valuable in a ledger sense, yet each went missing like a small theft of oxygen. If you've ever lived through this, you know, the things they take before the money are the ones you can't replace. I made coffee and watched the crema swirl like a storm on a satellite map. Spencer wandered in barefoot, dressed in entitlement, and a t-shirt from a business conference he'd left before lunch. He didn't say good morning. "We'll need the Tahoe," he announced, opening a cupboard that had never been his. "Airport runs, luggage, you know." "It's registered to the company," I said. "Use your car." He laughed. "Sold it. Bad deal. Market's weird." "The market isn't the problem," I said softly. "Discipline is." His jaw flexed. "Don't start." Madison sashayed in, sunlight caught on her phone case like glitter on oil. "Babe," she cooed to Spencer, "the resort just messaged. Our cabana's confirmed oceanfront. I picked the romance package." She glanced at me, voice sugar over knives. "You'll be fine alone, right? You prefer quiet." There was a beat, one of those beats that decide the next 5 years of a family. I set my cup down. "Take the guest room," I told them. "Leave the master alone." Madison's lip curled. "You don't even sleep there half the time." "I will tonight." Spencer's smile turned into a warning. "Don't make this tense." "Spencer," I said, Tension doesn't come from boundary lines. It comes from crossing them. He shook his head, bored. You always dramatize. You're 60. It's time to hand things off. I'm 58, I replied, and things are handed to people who can hold them. His eyes chilled. You're useless now. The words blew past his lips too casually to be accidental. They'd been rehearsing in his throat for months. Somewhere in me, a hinge clicked into place. If you, listening to this, have ever heard a sentence like that, if someone you fed, clothed, funded, looked you in the face and graded your worth like produce, I want you to know you are not alone, and you are not crazy for feeling the ground go sideways. I didn't argue. I opened my laptop at the kitchen island and sent 3 emails. The first to Kimberly Tran, my acting COO. Steady hands, clear eyes. Full audit, company and personal accounts. Discreetly. Pull vendor lists, card statements, wire logs for the last 24 months. Meet at 7 p.m. tonight, my office. The second to Mark Jacobs, my attorney. Review trust instruments and board bylaws. Schedule emergency session for tomorrow morning. The third to Sharon Vance, a private investigator who never wore trench coats or carried cliches, just a small notebook and a larger silence. Need assistance identifying buyer of BMW, verifying any side agreements Spencer may have signed. Priority high. I closed the laptop and looked out to the pool, at the platinum ring of sunlight bobbing over the blue. When you've spent years being generous, drawing a line feels like violence. It isn't. It is first aid. By noon, the housekeeper, Pilar, knocked lightly on the kitchen door. She'd been with us since before Richard's diagnosis, the kind of presence that makes a home because she sees what breaks long before it shatters. Senora Evelyn, she said softly, they asked for your jewelry case. You told them no, I said, and Pilar nodded, her eyes bright with the fear of someone who knows storms by their smell. Go home early, I told her. I'll pay you for the full day. She hesitated, then pressed a small rosary into my palm. For courage, she whispered. After she left, I opened the safe again and pulled out the folder labeled Aviation. Richard and I had kept interests in several companies. Assets that looked dull on a spreadsheet but sharp when you needed leverage. Among them, a majority stake in Zephyr Sky Charter, and an option, never exercised, to acquire a light business jet through a tax-efficient leasing structure. When Richard was alive, the jet had felt indulgent. Now it felt like a sentence I hadn't finished writing. I drove to the office with the top down, air needling my cheeks awake. In my glass-walled corner, the city hummed like a neutral witness. Kimberly arrived with a stack of binders and the expression of a woman who didn't like delivering bad news. We found things, she said, laying pages out like a coroner. Multiple corporate cards tied to Spencer's Innovation Fund, no board authorization, recurring withdrawals, private concierge services, luxury retail, and, she tapped a spreadsheet, series of transfers to a holding company in Nevada controlled by Madison. I absorbed it without blinking. Total exposure? Conservatively, $1.9 million 18 months. The number didn't shock me. What did was the pattern. Small enough each month to hide in noise, large enough to bleed. Bleeding is quieter than theft, and far more dangerous. Kimberly wasn't finished. There's also this. She slid over a scanned deed. A draft quitclaim for the Aspen property. Never executed, but the notary block is odd. I traced a signature. Mine, but not mine. The flourish on the A was wrong. Whoever had mocked it hadn't known that I don't loop the tail. Start freezing the discretionary accounts, I said. Suspend Spencer's corporate cards pending routine security updates. Inform payroll to halt any bonuses until after a governance review. Kimberly nodded, relief flickering through her composure. And the board? Tomorrow morning, I said. Full session. When she left, I sat alone with the city heat on the windows, the air conditioner breathing a soft, conditional comfort. I thought of Spencer as a boy, how he used to fall asleep in the back seat of that BMW, small mouth open to the rhythm of Richard's humming. Memory can be cruel. It shows you what people were on their best days and asks you to compare it to what stands in front of you now. I refuse to compare. I choose to measure. At 5, my phone lit with a name I hadn't seen in years, Vivian Monroe. We'd shared dorm bed sheets and bad poetry once. Then life spooled in different directions. I saw the industry blog, she said, voice warm velvet with an iron thread. Congrats on the Manhattan Tower deal, but that's not why I called. I'm in town. Drinks? I exhaled something like gratitude. I don't drink much anymore. Tea then. I don't care what's in the cup. I care what's in your eyes. We met at a quiet hotel lounge where the lighting forgives and the chairs listen. She read my face before the server could. Family? She asked. Family, I said. She didn't launch into advice. She folded her hands and let silence do the asking until the words came on their own. I told her about the empty garage, the vacation receipts, Madison's little humiliations. Vivian winced in the exact right places and never once said, I told you so, which is why I trusted her. You don't get bonus points in heaven for letting people bury you with your own shovel, she said finally. You taught him generosity. It's time to teach him consequence. I smiled, a crack of light through asphalt. I've started. She raised a brow. How much of you have they seen? Only the parts I put on display. Good, she said. Keep the rest for the moment that matters. Back at the house, twilight stretched the rooms into long blue thoughts. Spencer and Madison had blasted music by the pool, fat, lazy beats that said nothing about anything. I walked past them without stopping. In my bedroom, I opened the closet and ran my fingers along the row of Richard's cufflinks still kept in a velvet tray. Little suns of metal, perfect circles of order in a house unraveling. My phone buzzed. Sharon Vance. BMW sold to a collector, she said. Name on bill of sale, Gerald Pike. Cashier's check below market price. There's chatter he flips classic cars through a shell, then launders them. I'll confirm. Find the car, I said. I don't care what it costs. You might, she replied dryly, but I'll be efficient. Also, your son met Pike last month at a poker game. Thought you'd want to know. I thanked her and hung up. Out by the pool, Madison squealed. Babe, try the card again. It must be a glitch. I didn't look. But my mouth remembered how to smile. At 9, Spencer knocked on my door and didn't wait for permission to come in. He held out his phone like a summons. The cards aren't working. Fix it. I did, I said. You froze them? His voice cracked up a register I hadn't heard since 7th grade. Routine security updates, I answered, calm as marble. Also, the board meets at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Be there. He scoffed. You can't be serious. I have a flight. Reschedule, I said, then added the line that seemed to confuse him more than any threat could. This is me loving you. What does that even mean? It means I won't sponsor your self-destruction. It means I'm turning the lights on. He stepped closer. Rage flickering. You think you can cut me out? I'm your heir. Heirs inherit, I said. Leaders build. Right now you are neither. Madison appeared behind him, mascara already marshalling into battle. Evelyn, be reasonable. He's your son. And you are my daughter-in-law, I replied. Not my banker. Her mouth opened, then closed. Spencer tried another angle. If you embarrass me tomorrow, I'll tell the board you're losing it. Everyone knows you've been fragile since Dad. The name was a lever he still thought could move the room. I walked to my dresser, picked up Richard's old pilot watch. He never flew, but he loved the engineering, and fastened it to my wrist. When I turned back, the moment was colder, cleaner. Spencer, I said, tomorrow will be recorded. Choose your words like they'll be replayed in a court, because they might. He tried to laugh, but the sound lacked oxygen. Laughter needs confidence. Arrogance only mimics it. He slammed the door on his way out, and the house shuddered just enough to admit the truth. A reckoning was already underway. I stood by the window, city lights pulsing beyond the trees, and thought of every woman who'd written to me after panels and charity lunches. My son drains my account. My daughter mocks my clothes at my husband's funeral. My children say I owe them because I breathed them into this world. If you are one of them, if you're here with me now, tell me. In this exact moment, what would you do? Would you silence yourself for peace, or would you risk the storm for air? Downstairs, a drawer slammed. Madison's voice rose, brittle. Why isn't the card going through? Spencer muttered something that ended with my name. I picked up the folder labeled Governance and the smaller one labeled Zephyr Sky Charter. In the mirror, my face looked older than it had that morning, but not weaker. The opposite of helpless isn't loud. It's prepared. At 8:57 a.m. tomorrow, the board would take their seats. At 8:58, Spencer would swagger in. At 8:59, I would open my mouth and change the weather back. The next morning smelled of nerves and espresso. My building's boardroom gleamed with polished oak and glass that tried too hard to hide the city beyond. The directors filed in with their briefcases and their guarded eyes. These men and women had watched me build Ashford real estate into a tower of glass and steel, but they had also whispered doubts. She spoils her son. She'll regret it. Today, they would see if those whispers were prophecy or noise. At 8:59, Spencer strolled in. Madison followed, overdressed for a board meeting, heels clicking like punctuation marks. He carried the confidence of someone who thought the room was already his. "Morning, everyone," he said, without the courtesy of waiting for me to begin. "Let's get this over with. I've got a flight." Mark Jacobs, my lawyer, leaned slightly toward me. "Remember," he murmured, "facts, not fury." I rose. "Thank you for coming on short notice. This emergency session addresses unauthorized expenditures, asset transfers, and potential fraud involving Spencer Ashford, currently listed as COO. A ripple of surprise cut across the table. Spencer laughed too loudly. "Fraud? Are you kidding me? She's paranoid. Everyone knows she's been fragile since Dad died." I let the word fragile hang in the air. Then I clicked the remote, and the screen lit with Kimberly's slides. Charts, bank statements, digital trails. Each transaction bloomed on the wall like bruises. "Over 18 months, I said steadily, company funds have been siphoned into accounts controlled by Madison under the guise of consulting services. No contracts exist. Total, $1.9 million. Gasps. Pens dropped. Madison's face blanched beneath layers of foundation. Spencer scoffed, trying bravado. "That's investment, growth strategy." "Then why forge my signature on a quitclaim deed for Aspen?" I clicked again. The forged document filled the screen, its sloppy A exposed under magnification. The room froze. Fraud is an ugly word in whispers. In evidence, it's a death sentence. One director cleared his throat. "Spencer, did you authorize this?" He sputtered. This is being twisted." Madison leaned in, hissing, Stop talking. I steadied my voice, keeping it cinematic but plain. This company has survived recessions, lawsuits, and my husband's death. It will not collapse under entitlement. Effective immediately, Spencer is suspended from all duties pending investigation. Corporate cards are frozen. Access revoked. The board didn't argue. They nodded, some with relief they didn't bother to hide. Spencer slammed the table. You can't do this to me! I'm your son. And that, I said softly, is why I must. He stormed out, Madison trailing, muttering about betrayal. The room exhaled as if oxygen had been returned. Mark Jacobs leaned close. That was surgical. But in my chest, the scalpel still cut. If you're listening, tell me. If it were your child, would you have swung the blade? Or would you have let the bleeding continue, hoping love might cauterize what evidence could not? That night, silence wrapped the house. I expected rage, slammed doors. Instead, Spencer avoided me. Madison, however, left little notes. Snide, venomous. On the fridge, enjoy your empty bed. On the hallway mirror, queens fall hardest. I kept them. Evidence doesn't always wear ink. 2 days later, Sharon called. Found the BMW. Pike still has it, planning to flip to a collector in Denver. He paid a fraction of market. I can intercept the deal if you want. Yes, I said, but I want Spencer to see it first. Sharon's chuckle was dry. Poetic justice. I'll arrange. Sunday evening, Spencer finally broke his silence. He cornered me in the living room, eyes bloodshot, shirt wrinkled. He looked less like a son, more like a gambler on his last chip. You think freezing me out makes you strong? He sneered. You don't know half of what I've set up. Madison's pregnant. The word landed like a fist in the gut, but his smirk told me what I needed. It was not joy, it was strategy. I whispered, and you believe that will shield you? He leaned closer, breath sharp with liquor. It makes me untouchable. You wouldn't throw your own grandchild into chaos. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled. Don't use innocence as a weapon. It stains you more than me. Later, I sat with Vivian at her apartment, words spilling like rain against her calm. You're not fighting Spencer, she said, pouring tea. You're fighting the shadow of what you hoped he'd be. Stop shadow boxing. Aim for the man in front of you. She was right. The boy in the BMW's back seat was gone. In his place stood a man who sold memory for cocktails, who wielded unborn children like bargaining chips. I returned home past midnight. Spencer's light was still on. I paused outside his door, listening to the muffled argument between him and Madison. Words like money, flight, liquidate leaked through. Then silence. Back in my room, I opened Richard's old pilot logbook. Blank pages still waited. I wrote, not a car, a jet, not loss, leverage. Because in 2 days, Spencer would learn the truth. While he bartered away scraps, I had been guarding the skies. If you were me, if your child held unborn life as ransom, if your memories had been traded for vacations, would you still call it family? Or would you start calling it survival? The storm had only begun. 2 days later, the storm broke. I invited Spencer and Madison to the office under the pretense of clearing the air. They arrived late, of course. Madison's perfume entering the room before she did. Spencer's arrogance trailing close behind. He slouched into the leather chair opposite my desk as though he still owned it. So, he said, drumming his fingers, are you ready to undo this little tantrum? Restore my cards, my position, and let's move forward like a family. Madison smirked. And don't forget the Aspen house. We're entitled to that. I folded my hands on the desk. Entitled? No? Inherited? Perhaps, if you prove worthy. But entitlement without accountability ends today. Spencer's jaw flexed. You're bluffing. You need me. The company needs me. I pressed a button on the remote. The wall screen lit up, revealing photographs of a sleek white jet parked in a private hangar, sunlight gleaming off its polished wings. This, I said calmly, is mine. Not leased, not shared, fully owned through Zephyr Sky Charter, acquired quietly years ago. While you were bleeding accounts, I was building leverage. Madison gasped. A jet? You... Spencer's bravado cracked for the first time. That's impossible. I never displayed it. I cut in. Richard once told me, guard what you cherish with silence. You thought the BMW was my last tie to him. You were wrong. He and I prepared for storms like this. While you played, I planned. The silence in the room was surgical. Then I delivered the blade. Effective immediately, Spencer. You are removed from all company roles. The board voted unanimously this morning. You have 30 days to vacate the guest house. Corporate counsel will deliver terms by noon. Spencer's face twisted. You can't. I'm your son. You're an adult who chose theft over trust, I replied. Blood grants relation, not immunity. He lunged forward, knocking a glass off the desk. Shards scattered like punctuation marks to a sentence we both already knew. Calm yourself, I said, voice steel. Because if you raise your hand, or your voice, in this office again, the police will escort you out. For a moment I saw the boy he once was, trembling after losing a schoolyard fight. But that boy had buried himself beneath layers of greed. Madison's phone buzzed. She glanced down, face draining of color. Spence, she whispered. The cards? None of them work. Not even the joint accounts. His fury turned feral. You froze everything? Every cent you siphoned, I said. Already traced, already documented. Fraud isn't a family matter. It's a legal one. That evening, I met Sharon in a dimly lit cafe. She slid an envelope across the table. BMW's secure, she said. Pike agreed to a buyback under pressure. Cars in storage, paper trails clean. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Richard's memory is safe. Sharon leaned back. But you should know, your son tried to use the car as collateral for a side deal. If you hadn't intervened, it would have vanished overseas. The knife twisted deeper, but it also solidified my resolve. Love without boundaries is gasoline on betrayal. That night, Madison cornered me in the hallway. Mascara smudged like ink stains. You're cruel, she hissed. You'll ruin him. No, I said gently. He ruined himself. I'm just refusing to clean up the pieces anymore. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw fear instead of arrogance. What about the baby? She whispered. I searched her face. Are you truly pregnant, Madison? Or is it another card in Spencer's deck? Tears pooled, silent confession. You don't have to answer, I said. But know this. I will never abandon an innocent child. If there is life, I will protect it. But I will not protect his lies. She covered her face and fled. The climax came 2 mornings later at the company headquarters. Spencer stormed in during a staff meeting, disheveled, wild-eyed. You think you can erase me? He shouted, slamming a fist against the glass wall. This is my legacy. Employees froze, coffee cups midair. I rose slowly. Legacy is earned, not stolen. He lunged toward the conference table, knocking files onto the floor. Security moved, but I raised a hand. Spencer Ashford, I said, voice ringing across the room. You are trespassing. And this villa, this office, this company, it's mine, and you're trespassing. The words cut sharper than glass. Silence swallowed the room. Then, as if scripted, uniformed officers entered. Mark Jacobs had prepared the paperwork in advance. "Mr. Ashford," one officer said, "you're under arrest for fraud and forgery." Gasps, whispers. Spencer's face collapsed into disbelief. "Mom, you wouldn't—" "I didn't," I said softly. "You did." They cuffed him in front of the very employees he once lorded over. Madison stood frozen at the doorway, her mask shattering into fragments of shame. And for the first time in months, I breathed fully. That evening, I stood in the hangar beside the jet. Its engines hummed, not yet flying, but alive with promise. Vivian joined me, a scarf fluttering against the night air. "So," she said, "how does it feel?" "Like standing at the edge of a new sky," I whispered. She smiled. "Then take off." "Would you have done it? Would you have let the police take your own child, knowing love might never repair the fracture? Or would you have looked away, choosing silence over justice?" Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let darkness grow. The house was unbearably quiet the night after Spencer's arrest. Every echo of my footsteps reminded me of what had been lost and what had been saved. The guest house windows were dark, the music silenced, Madison gone without a word. I sat at the kitchen table, the BMW's keys in my hand. Sharon had delivered the car that afternoon, its chrome shining like forgiveness in the driveway. I ran my thumb over the worn leather fob, remembering Richard's laughter, the way he used to say, "When the world goes sideways, keep driving forward." But part of me still ached. He was my son. No matter how deeply he had cut, a mother's heart does not stop bleeding. If you've ever watched someone you love walk willingly into ruin, you know, punishment is not triumph. It is grief in sharper clothes. The next morning, I drove the BMW for the first time since its return. The engine purred, steady as a heartbeat. At a stoplight, I glanced at the passenger seat where Richard once sat, maps folded on his lap. For the first time in months, I whispered, "I did it. I chose truth over comfortable lies." The light turned green. The car surged forward, and with it, so did I. Later that week, Madison called. Her voice was thin, the bravado gone. "I left him," she confessed. "He used me. Lied about the baby. There never was one. I didn't know how far he'd go." For a long silence, I said nothing. Then, "You are not the first woman to be used by a man's ambition, but you are responsible for the harm you join." She sniffled. "What do I do now?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part remembered the girl beneath the cruelty. "Start over," I said. "Learn what it means to earn rather than take. And if one day you do carry a child, protect them from the poison of entitlement." She whispered thanks and hung up. I never heard from her again. Weeks passed. Spencer's trial loomed. I chose not to post bail. That decision broke something in me, but it also mended something greater. At the board meeting, the directors approved my succession plan. Kimberly promoted to COO. Vivian appointed as special advisor. Stability returned, steady as tide after storm. On the morning of the verdict, I sat outside the courthouse. The BMW waited at the curb, sunlight glancing off its hood. Inside, the jury declared what I already knew: guilty on multiple counts of fraud and forgery. His sentence would not be life behind bars, but it would be long enough for reflection. When Spencer was let out, our eyes met. For the first time, there was no rage in his face, only the hollow look of a man who'd gambled his inheritance and lost. I didn't speak. Some silences carry more weight than words. That evening, I boarded the jet. Vivian clasped my hand at the steps. "You're not flying away from him," she said softly. You're flying toward yourself. The cabin smelled of new leather and quiet promise. As the engines roared to life, the city fell away beneath me, glittering like scattered coins I no longer needed. I thought of every woman who had written to me, who had whispered their own betrayals in kitchens, in hospital rooms, at funerals where children mocked their clothes. This flight was for them too, for every mother, wife, sister who had been silenced. The sky widened, freedom hummed through steel and wing. I'll leave you with this. Respect is not guaranteed by blood. It is earned through love, through kindness, through truth. And when love is twisted into entitlement, the bravest act is to draw a boundary so sharp it bleeds. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have drawn that line? Would you have risked being called cruel, cold, heartless, just to save what was left of yourself? Share your thoughts below. Your stories matter here, and before you go, don't forget, subscribe to Tangled Heart Stories and ring the bell. Here, every tale of sacrifice, betrayal, and justice is a reminder you are not alone. Together, we demand respect, we reclaim dignity, and we write endings that heal. Because sometimes the truest revenge is not destruction, it's survival.